Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. We have a story now about Michael Matheson, a man for whom trouble has no limits. He is admitting he's a liar, he's a thief, he's got the problems of what is actually on his iPad. Nobody believes anything he says. He's quite inept at his job. He's overseeing one of the worst records in the NHS under his watch. There is no reason for this man to be in the position he's in. It's only the fact that Humza Yousaf hasn't fired him, because if he did, it would show that Humza Yousaf was wrong to select him in the first place, and then Humza would look as though he'd made a mistake. And Humza doesn't make mistakes, as we know, because he's practically perfect in every way. And if you believe that, hey. But Matheson is still there. But you have to ask now, for how much longer? Because there's another row on the books. Nothing, of course, to do with anything that's happened before. This is a whole new scandal involving Scotland's almost their worst politician. And this one is all to do with his short-term lets and the property that he owns and the breaking of the law. Yet another law broke, and yet the man is still in his position. He won't resign and he won't be fired. You have to ask, how many laws can you have to break before they fire you? Let's have a look at the story and see how bad this one is on top of everything else. Here goes. So, under fire, Michael Matheson in fresh scandal after breaking his own government's law on short-term lets. Again, another thing, he's broken another law. He's gone into further problems. He's still not been fired. He still hasn't quit. This is a joke. Now, before we do get into this, I will say that given the potentiality of what may come up with Humza Yousaf and Anam Kazir, possibly, I would be very surprised if Matheson isn't fired. I think Humza Yousaf may fire him to create a new story revolving around Michael Matheson in order to sort of deflect news and media attention away from any kind of potential illegal shagging by the leader of the party, maybe. Who knows? But it's definitely on the cards, because Matheson now he's gone further, yet again showing that he is completely untrustworthy and a lawbreaker. And we wonder how many lies he's going to try and tell over this one. Bound to be quite a few. And then he'll change his story again. And maybe this time it'll be somebody else's fault. His wife's fault. His kid's fault. It's his kids. His kids did it. Yes, that's right. Because that's what he does, isn't it? He blames other people. Anyway, the beleaguered health secretary faces more pressure to quit after failing to follow short-term rental rules. Disgraced health minister Michael Matheson broke his own government's law on short-term lets over his luxury holiday home, we can reveal. The SNP MSP ignored Scottish Government legislation around holiday rentals when he failed to declare his licence and energy rating on adverts for the rural cottage on Skye, which has unlimited Wi-Fi. That's somewhere perhaps he should have gone on holiday rather than Morocco, don't you think? 3 days after the Sunday Mail revealed the ownership of the £200,000 home, ads on rental sites and the property's own website were then updated with the missing information. Opposition politicians claimed it was another cover-up by Matheson and urged FM Humza Yousaf to finally ditch the under-fire, law-breaking, lying, thieving minister. Last month, Matheson was forced to admit that his family ran up an £11,000 data bill watching football matches on holiday, but we only have his word for it that that's what the cause was. And until he hands his iPad over, we shall never know. And so we are free to speculate on what other degenerate things that were being watched by him, perhaps. The Labour Deputy Leader Jackie Bailey said, once again, the embattled health minister has found himself at the heart of a scandal that he's brought upon himself for not following his own party's laws. He broke the law again. You keep breaking the law and you keep your job. It's the SNP way. Anyway, she said this will pile more pressure on Mr Matheson as his flagrant disregard of his own government's rules comes to light. It's time for Michael Matheson to step aside as he's clearly preoccupied when his entire focus should be on tackling the crisis in the NHS. A crisis, it must be said, making of the SNP's own making. The Scottish Government legislation on short-term lets came into force on October the 1st, 2022, so well over a year now. And owners had until October the 1st, 2023 to obtain a licence to keep operating. And he hasn't. Dearie me. It's just getting worse for the lying, thieving, law-breaking, conniving, two-faced, family-blaming tosspot. According to new laws, the homeowner must ensure that any advert or listing placed on or after you are granted a licence includes your licence number, and all online adverts should be updated with the number as soon as reasonably practicable after receiving your licence. Matheson was granted a temporary licence by the Highland Council on September the 18th, and according to the law, you should use the temporary licence number or provisional licence number on your advert or listing if you don't have a permanent licence. And he did no such thing, therefore breaking the law. Another law broken, and still he's in a job. Do the laws not count if you're an SNP, MSP? Is it laws are just for the little people, just for the commoners, us nobodies? We have to obey the law, but they don't. The laws don't apply to the high and mighty of the SNP, it seems. Certainly not if you're the leading policewoman in Scotland. If you're in charge of all the police, then thievery there is quite acceptable, and a simple apology is seen to be enough. But when you steal from the public purse, surely you should lose your job. But it's not the SNP way, as we can see from Matheson. The legislation says local authorities can take action such as issuing enforcement notices to anyone who's not complying with the new rules. And it also states as mandatory condition that you need to display the EPC rating in all adverts for short-term lets. So far, Yousaf has stuck by his health secretary, but sources say he was on his last life with the First Minister. Matheson's two-bedroom cottage on Skye makes between $10,000 and $15,000 a year, according to his register of interest, but he claims he doesn't make a profit due to running costs. BS. It's £875 a week to rent. The home can only be occupied by holidaymakers for a maximum of 17 weeks a year. If so, Matheson is at odds with its own party's position on second homes. Chief Executive of the Association of Self-Caterers, Fiona Campbell, said, while the ASSC have fought the Scottish Government's erroneous short-term let legislation for many years, it is now law, and we do encourage anyone who operates a short-term let, whether a member of ASSC or not, to do so being compliant with the laws of the land. A government minister should lead by example and comply with the government's short-term let law. He should be doing absolutely everything right. You have to display your EPC rating on every online and offline advertisement. And now the licence number. And of course Matheson did neither. She said it's an additional regulatory burden for no demonstrable benefit, but it is the legal position, so a government minister should know better. It's clearly time for a meaningful review of this legislation and a meaningful review of his position, a position to which it should now be an ex-Minister for Health. The SNP brought in the short-term lets legislation in part to try and address the lack of affordable homes for local people, particularly in rural areas. Perhaps if they went around and were building new homes, that would be helpful too. But they don't do that because they don't want people to be happy and content and have their own homes. A happy population tend not to vote for the SNP. In many areas, including on Skye, local people say they are either forced to move away or their children can't afford to buy a home because they're priced out due to holiday homes. That's the market, I'm afraid. During a Holyrood debate on the issue in September, SNP MSP for Western Isles, Alistair Allen, said, in many places, people are simply being priced out of their own communities, and I cannot help but note that those are the areas where there's been a massive proliferation of short-term lets. Skye is one of the areas with a high number of holiday homes. On the stretch of road where Matheson's own cottage sits, there's at least 9 other holiday rentals, and official figures from 2019 show the island had more than 1,000 short-term lets. Well, it's going to be. It's the holidaymakers coming in and spending money, which is the heart, really, of the economy. Now, if you don't have enough homes on Skye, the problem there isn't the holiday homes. The problem there is you don't have enough homes on Skye. Build some more. Simple. But they won't do that. As I say, they daren't build them because people might be happy. John Findlayson, an independent councillor for the, oh God help me, is it Achio? Eileen Achio? I think, ward, which includes Skye, said, if I'm wrong, by the way, do please correct me in the comments. Sometimes I need places I've never been, I've never heard. But I think it's Eileen Achio, but we'll see. Anyway, the issue of second homes is an issue that really affects places like Skye, Rasi and the whole of the West Coast, even. Coast. Having a hard time pronouncing coast here. Anyway, he said, recently I was in conversation with a resident of Plockton who indicated 40% of the houses in the village were occupied for only a few weeks of the year, and 2 traditional properties went on the market this year for just over £500,000. Well, if that's what the price is, that's what people will pay. If people are willing to pay it, what do you expect? What are you going to say to the owners? No, don't make as much money as you possibly can. Would you put yourself in a position where you wouldn't maximise your profit? You know, it's a bit hypocritical to say that you would. Anyway, they said the same is being experienced on families on Skye and Rasi, where some properties are again only being used for several weeks a year. It is what it is. One of the problems, of course, is that the SNP, who are very much against second homes, have a policy that they shouldn't, particularly ministers, shouldn't own second homes. Now, he's claiming it is held in a business and therefore it's not a commercial, it's a commercial letting business and he doesn't own the property in his own name and things like that. But it is still very hypocritical of him. And it's another thing you can beat him with. And he is just a nasty bit. So let's just get rid of him. Humza Yousaf needs to just fire his arse, get him down the road and tell him to sod off and never raise his head again. He's a liar, he's a thief, he's a lawbreaker, and he's also a smug, oleaginous, smarmy tosser who blames his children. He'll probably blame his wife for this one though, won't he? Oh, my wife didn't do it. It's her fault. Or something like that. He won't take responsibility because he daren't. Anyway, I'm going to round off and come up. I can't see how he can continue. He must go. Even Matheson must know that it's time. He must resign or be fired. Either way, he must go. There's no way we can have this man, a proven liar, a man who tried to defraud the public purse, a man who's now breaking the law on another matter, a man who blames his children for his own shortcomings, a man who's overseeing a department that is disintegrating and imploding under his watch, a man who is incapable of doing his job and is too busy wrapped up in his own personal issues to deal with the terrible task of trying to save the NHS in the first place. It's a fail all round, and it's time he went. Finish there. Thank you very much for watching. Do keep interest on this story. We cannot let other distractions, such as various affairs, try and derail the fact that Matheson must go. So we will continue to keep the pressure on him. Humza Yousaf has got to get rid of him, and then we've all got to try and get rid of Humza Yousaf and Anam Kazir and all of them, really, because they're all degenerate freeloaders, aren't they? Anyway, till next time, stay safe, stay well, and I shall speak to you later. Bye.